Could this be any more of a show? That one line made Friends a global phenomenon. But here's what most people don't know. This show, the one that ran for 10 years, 236 episodes, and became one of the most successful sitcoms in history, almost never made it to air. One of the actors walked into their audition with just $11 to their name. The show had 5 different titles, and behind the scenes, there was a moment where everything nearly collapsed before it even began. And yet somehow, it turned 6 unknown actors into television legends, built an empire on nothing but conversations in a coffee shop, and convinced millions of people that affording a Manhattan apartment on a waitress's salary made perfect sense. So what really happened behind the scenes? Today, we're diving into 8 wild, bizarre, and honestly unbelievable facts about Friends, including the story that nearly erased it from existence. And trust me, by the time you hear number 1, you won't see this show the same way again. Number 8. The show was called Insomnia Cafe. First, and nobody knew what it was. Let's go all the way back to 1993, before the fountain, before the iconic orange couch, before anyone had ever heard the words, "How you doin'," delivered with that particular brand of confident stupidity. In 1993, 2 writers named Marta Kauffman and David Crane sat down with NBC executive Warren Littlefield in a restaurant and pitched him a television show. And what they described to him was, loosely, this. 6 young people, somewhere in their mid-20s, hanging around a coffee shop in New York City, trying to figure out what being an adult actually means. That was the pitch. No murder mystery, no courtroom drama, no dashing hero. Just people, being people, talking about their feelings over caffeine. Littlefield reportedly didn't quite know what to make of it. Now here's where it gets fascinating. The show went through not 1, not 2, but 4 title changes before a single camera rolled. Insomnia Cafe became Friends Like Us. Friends Like Us became 6 of 1. 6 of 1 briefly became Across the Hall, which sounds less like a sitcom and more like a low-budget thriller about a nosy neighbor. And then, finally, it became simply Friends. One word, no flourish, no grand declaration, just Friends. But here's the detail that really gets me. In the original pitch document that Kauffman and Crane presented to NBC, they described the show's central theme in one sentence. And that sentence was this: it's about that time in your life when your friends are your family. That's it. That's the whole show. That's the emotional engine that ran for 10 years. Number 7. Courtney Cox was offered the role of Rachel, not Monica. This one stops people cold, and I want you to actually sit with it for a moment. When NBC was casting Friends in early 1994, the producers approached Courtney Cox. Now, she wasn't an unknown. She'd already appeared on Family Ties, and famously, been pulled on stage by Bruce Springsteen in the Dancing in the Dark music video. And they offered her the role of Rachel Green. Rachel, the runaway bride, the girl who leaves her rich fiancé at the altar, walks into a coffee shop in a wedding dress, and is forced to actually build a life for herself from scratch. It's a great role. It's arguably the most traditional entry point character in the whole show, designed so the audience could experience this brand new world through her eyes. Courtney Cox read it and said no. Not to the show, to that specific character. She pushed, reportedly with genuine conviction, for Monica Geller. The competitive one, the neurotic one, the obsessively clean, control-obsessed, relentlessly hardworking chef who, beneath all the perfectionism, had a heart the size of a small country. And NBC, to their enormous credit, said yes. Now think carefully about what that swap means for the entire show. Monica Geller is one of the most specific, most fully realized comic characters in sitcom history. And she's that way, in part, because the actress playing her fought to be there. Cox didn't wait to be assigned the role. She identified herself in the character and claimed it. That competitive energy Cox brought to Monica, that relentless need to win, to be the best, to hold everything together while everyone else is falling apart? Number 6. Matt LeBlanc walked into his audition with $11 to his name. I want you to close your eyes and imagine this scene. Actually, don't close your eyes because then you can't read this, but mentally picture it. The year is 1994. A 26-year-old actor named Matt LeBlanc, who has a handful of small TV roles to his name, a few commercials, and absolutely nothing else, gets an audition for a new NBC sitcom about young people in New York. He shows up to that audition with $11 in his pocket. Not 1,100, not 11,000, $11. In New York City in 1994. That's not even a decent lunch. LeBlanc has spoken about this period publicly and at length. He's described that time in his life as one of genuine desperation, sleeping in an apartment in rough condition, not sure how to keep the electricity on, wondering whether he needed to seriously consider an alternative career path. He was not a young man with a plan B. He was a young man trying to survive. And then he walked into a room and read for Joey Tribbiani. Now, Joey, as a character, is written as a lovable, not particularly intellectual actor from a big Italian-American family in Queens. He's charming in a way that bypasses logic entirely. He's loyal to the point of irrationality, and he wears every emotion right on his face, completely unguarded, without a single ounce of self-consciousness. LeBlanc didn't have to manufacture any of that. He was hungry, literally hungry, and that kind of raw, unpolished authenticity is something you genuinely cannot fake in an audition room. Casting directors can feel it. It came through. He got the part. And within a handful of years, the same man who arrived at that audition with $11 was earning $1 million per episode. $1 million per episode. But here's the part that really gets to me. LeBlanc has said, on record, that he almost didn't go to the audition at all. He was tired. He was discouraged. He was seriously considering not bothering. He showed up anyway. $11 and a decision not to quit. That's what changed everything. That's what gave us Joey's, "How you doing?" That's what gave us the sandwich. That's what gave us the entire, glorious, beautiful disaster of the Joey spinoff, which we don't need to discuss today. But it existed, and we respect the attempt. The point is, he showed up, and that mattered more than anything else. Real quick, I know, 99 out of 100 people watching this right now haven't hit subscribe yet. And honestly, after Matt LeBlanc's story, that stings a little. The man showed up with $11 and changed television. Subscribing costs you nothing. Do it now. You're not just clicking a button. You're making sure stories like these keep getting told. Okay, back to the chaos. Number 5. Marcel the Monkey was an absolute production nightmare. If you watched the early seasons of Friends, you remember Marcel, Ross Geller's pet capuchin monkey, introduced in Season 1 as his post-divorce emotional support animal. Cute little thing, very expressive face, wore Ross's scarves sometimes, very photogenic. Also, apparently, an absolute terror to work with. Here's the full story. The monkey who played Marcel was actually a female capuchin monkey named Katie, trained by an animal handler named Nerissa. Now, capuchin monkeys, let me break that down real quick for you, are highly intelligent primates known for being curious, quick, and extremely reactive to stimulation, which is a polite way of saying, put one in a TV studio with bright lights, cameras, a live audience, and 6 increasingly stressed human actors, and you are in for a very long day. According to multiple accounts from cast and crew, Katie had a consistent habit of getting overstimulated during shooting, which meant refusing to hit her marks, ignoring cues, and occasionally doing things on camera that were entirely unrepeatable on a network television show at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. Jennifer Aniston has addressed the Marcel situation in interviews over the years. She's been gracious about it. She has chosen her words carefully, but the phrase, "not my favorite on-set experience," has appeared in her public comments more than once, and anyone who's read between those lines understands exactly what she meant. David Schwimmer, whose character Ross was essentially in a full emotional partnership with this animal, reportedly found those shooting days genuinely exhausting. Number 4. Jennifer Aniston almost said no to the entire show. This one requires a small amount of context, because the reason Jennifer Aniston nearly turned down Friends is itself a story worth understanding. In 1994, before Friends was greenlit, and that means officially approved for those keeping up, Aniston was already attached to a different sitcom, a CBS comedy called Muddling Through. She had shot the pilot, the show had received a series order, and she was contractually speaking, not available to do anything else. Then, Friends happened. The Friends producers, specifically Kaufman and Crane, had seen Aniston's work and wanted her, specifically her, for Rachel. They made the offer, and then hit a wall, because CBS had what's called first right of refusal. A legal clause meaning they get to decide first whether they're keeping the actress or releasing her. If CBS wanted to go forward with Muddling Through, Aniston couldn't touch another project. So NBC and the Friends team were just sitting there, waiting. They had a show to cast, they had a premiere date approaching, and their preferred Rachel was legally on hold. CBS deliberated, and then canceled Muddling Through. Jennifer Aniston walked directly from one network's canceled show into the role that would define the next decade of her life, her career, and, if we're being honest, a significant portion of her hair decisions. But here's the dimension of this story that genuinely unsettles me when I sit with it. During those weeks, when nobody knew what CBS was going to decide, the Friends producers were quietly considering what the show would look like without Aniston. Number 3. The cast pulled off the greatest salary negotiation in TV history. Alright, this one is about money, power, solidarity, and 6 people doing something that had essentially never been done at this level in American primetime television. Stick with me. By season 3, Friends wasn't just a successful show. It was a full-blown cultural institution. NBC was building their entire Thursday night lineup around it. Advertisers were paying premium rates just to be associated with it. The merchandise, the t-shirts, the coffee mugs, the VHS box sets that your mom definitely still has in a drawer somewhere, was everywhere. And the 6 cast members looked at their individual contracts and made a decision. They decided to negotiate together. In professional terms, this is called block negotiating, and for a television cast in the 1990s, it was essentially unprecedented at this scale. The standard Hollywood approach was the opposite of this. Negotiate with each actor separately, keep them isolated, make sure nobody knows what anyone else is earning. It's a system specifically engineered to maintain the power imbalance between studios and performers. The Friends cast, and I want you to genuinely appreciate how much collective courage this took, refused to participate in that system. They hired a single, shared negotiator, presented a completely unified front, and delivered NBC one message: equal pay for all 6 or we're not moving. Every single one of them, standing together. NBC looked at their most valuable property, did the maths, and blinked. By seasons 9 and 10, all 6 cast members were earning $1 million per episode, each. 6 people, $1 million each, per episode. Let that breathe for a moment. To give that number some human scale, in season 1, they were earning approximately $22,500 per episode. That's a significant sum, but it's a vastly different life from $1 million. And the journey from one number to the other wasn't handed to them. They organized, they stood firm, and they changed the outcome. What the Friends cast did in those negotiations became a genuine template for how television performers approach contract discussions to this day. Their refusal to be divided restructured the economics of television stardom. Other casts, on other shows, used Friends as the reference point when arguing for better terms. 6 people, one decision. An industry shifted. And the best part? They did it while pretending, on screen, to be broke 20-somethings who couldn't afford decent furniture. The dramatic irony. That's when the audience knows something the characters don't. Practically writes itself. All right, quick pause, because I genuinely want to know what you think. Here's my question, and I want real answers in the comments below. Which Friends character do you think was the most underrated? Meaning, the one who deserved way more credit than they actually got. Was it Chandler, the funniest person in the room, who somehow got treated as the emotional sidekick? Was it Phoebe, who was basically the wisest character in the entire show, dressed up in quirkiness so nobody would notice? Or was it Monica, the literal backbone of the group, who held everyone's lives together and somehow never got the big dramatic storyline she deserved? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. And while you're there, if this video has been delivering for you, the subscribe button is right there. 2 facts left, and number 1 is the one that changes everything. Number 2. The Rachel haircut started a nationwide hairdressing crisis. I want to be very clear that when I say crisis, I mean it with the deepest affection, but I also mean it accurately. When Jennifer Aniston debuted her layered, highlighted, softly waved haircut in season 1 of Friends, something happened that nobody, not the network, not the production team, not the stylists, had remotely anticipated. Women across America started walking into hair salons and saying 3 words. Give me Rachel. No picture, no magazine page torn out, no lengthy description, just give me Rachel. And every hairdresser in the country knew exactly what that meant. The style, created by Aniston's personal hairstylist Chris McMillan, became what media scholars call a cultural cascade. Let me unpack that phrase. It means one single image, repeated consistently on screen every week, begins to reshape the aesthetic. That means the visual choices of an enormous number of people simultaneously. The Rachel haircut was that image. Salons across the United States reported dramatic increases in requests for the style. Hair product companies began specifically packaging and marketing tools to help women recreate the look at home. The cut appeared on magazine covers. It was discussed on morning talk shows. It inspired entire tutorials, before the internet made tutorials a thing. Hairdressers have since described that period as exhausting, in the best possible way. It was the late 90s equivalent of a viral moment, except it sustained itself for years, not days. Here's the twist, though, and this one is genuinely delightful. Jennifer Aniston, in multiple interviews over the years, has said she did not particularly like that haircut. She found it extremely difficult to maintain. She's described it publicly as, and I'm paraphrasing carefully here, one of the more unflattering hairstyles she's experienced. The maintenance required to keep it looking like it did on screen was, by her account, significant and exhausting. A hairstyle that its own wearer found difficult and, privately, didn't love very much, became one of the most requested and influential aesthetic moments in American pop culture history. That is such a perfectly Friends thing. Accidentally brilliant, reluctantly iconic, a cultural revolution that nobody planned, nobody fully wanted, and everybody remembers. And somewhere right now, there is a woman in her late 40s who still has a photograph from 1997 where she's wearing the Rachel. And she looks fantastic, and she knows it. Number 1. The entire show almost didn't happen. NBC nearly passed on the pilot. We've arrived. Number 1. And I want to frame this carefully, because I think if you just hear the headline, NBC almost didn't pick up Friends, it sounds like a fun trivia fact. What it actually is, when you trace the full thread, is something much more significant. Let's go back to 1994, to the NBC Upfronts. Now, for those of you who aren't deep in the television industry weeds, the Upfronts is an annual event where American broadcast networks present their upcoming shows to advertisers and media buyers. Think of it like a very expensive, very high-stakes preview party, where the goal is to convince companies to spend their advertising money on your programming. If advertisers don't buy in, shows don't get funded. It's that direct. In 1994, NBC had a problem. Their comedy development slate, meaning the collection of sitcoms they were preparing to air, had been struggling. Several pilots had underperformed. The network was under genuine pressure from competitors. And into this pressure cooker walked a pilot for a show about 6 young people, a coffee shop, and the general experience of being in your mid-20s, and confused. The initial internal response to the Friends pilot at NBC was, by multiple accounts, mixed. Not bad, not great, mixed. Some executives responded enthusiastically. Others weren't sure the show had a clear enough commercial hook. It didn't have a tidy premise. It didn't have a plot in the traditional sense. It was just people, feeling things, having conversations, being funny and vulnerable and messy in ways that felt specific and real, but weren't easy to summarize in a pitch meeting. There were internal debates. There were questions about the show's viability, whether it was too soft, too quiet, too character-driven in an era when networks were still uncertain whether audiences would follow characters they couldn't describe easily. Warren Littlefield, the NBC Entertainment president at the time, has spoken publicly about how the decision to order Friends to series was not as clean or obvious as the show's eventual success might suggest. He has described the period as one of real uncertainty, real internal disagreement, real risk. But Littlefield made a call. He believed in the central idea. He believed in the cast, who were all, at that point, largely unknown. And he believed in the emotional premise that Kaufman and Crane had first described to him in that restaurant. This is a show about the family you choose. He said yes. Friends debuted on September 22, 1994. 12.5 million people watched the very first episode. By the time the finale aired on May 6, 2004, 10 seasons, 236 episodes, and one very contentious discussion about a certain break later, the last episode was watched by 52.5 million Americans. It remains one of the most watched series finales in the history of American television. And on streaming? Friends has never fully left the top 10. 30 years after its premiere, teenagers who were not alive when it ended are discovering The Couch, discovering Central Perk, discovering 6 people who are just trying to figure out what it means to be an adult with people they love, generation after generation. Same couch, same coffee, same feeling. Warren Littlefield sat in a room full of uncertainty and said yes to a show about nothing much, because he believed, somewhere underneath all the quiet, ordinary scenes, it was about something that everything comes back to eventually. The family you choose. Sometimes that's genuinely all it takes. Here's something I know for certain. You just spent real time here. You learned things about a show you thought you already knew everything about. You can't unknow the $11. You can't unknow Marcel, the chaos monkey. You can't unknow what Courtney Cox did when they handed her the wrong role. And if this landed for you, there's one button between you and more of it. Hit subscribe. No commitment, no cost, just good television stories every single week. You're not just clicking a button. You're making sure shows like Friends never get forgotten. That matters. Okay, let's land this.
And there you have it. 8 shocking, wild, and genuinely unbelievable facts about the show that took a coffee shop couch and turned it into the center of the television universe for a decade straight. And then somehow kept going for 30 years after. Which one hit you hardest? Was it Matt LeBlanc and those $11? Was it the monkey situation? Because honestly, that one always gets people. Or did the salary negotiation story reframe the whole show for you the way it did for me the first time I came across it? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely read them. Every one. Now, speaking of shows that had absolutely no business being as iconic as they turned out, I've got something big coming up for you next. We're heading to The Cosby Show, 1984 to 1992. And there is a fact in that video that I promise you have never heard told this way before. Here's what I'll say. One of that show's main cast members didn't just times their professional role on screen. They actually went out and learned the real-world skills their character was supposed to have to a level that genuinely shocked the production team. Not for the cameras, not for press. Just because they believed in getting it right. The full story is in the next video, and it changes how you watch every scene that character is ever in. Click that video right now. It's right there on your screen. Because if you thought Friends had surprises, The Cosby Show is about to take you somewhere else entirely.